Imagine this. You're on a business trip, checking into an old hotel in a remote town. Exhausted from your long journey, you enter your room, ready to rest. But something about this room isn't right. There's a strange smell in the air, and you can hear faint breathing from an unknown corner. Sarah, a successful 35-year-old manager, had traveled to a small town for an important contract. The town's old hotel was her only accommodation option. When she received the key to room 237, the receptionist gave her an odd smile and said, "I hope you have a pleasant stay." Sarah entered the room and placed her suitcase beside the bed. Fatigue from the journey quickly lulled her to sleep. At midnight, she woke up with an intense feeling of cold. The window was closed, but the room temperature had dropped unnaturally. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound coming from the closet. Frightened, she got up and approached the closet. As she placed her hand on the handle, she felt something pulling the handle from inside. Terrified, she jumped back and tried to flee the room, but the door was locked. She heard footsteps behind her. Slowly turning around, she faced a sight that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Do you want to know what Sarah saw and how she escaped this predicament? Read the next story for a possible clue. Imagine you're in a luxurious hotel. Everything seems perfect until one night you accidentally press the basement button in the elevator. The doors open and you're confronted with a sight you were never meant to see. Mehran, a 28-year-old photographer, had come to a 5-star hotel in the north of the country to photograph a wedding. On the first night of his stay, after finishing work, he headed tiredly towards his room on the 10th floor. He entered the elevator and, while fiddling with his phone, pressed a button without paying attention. The elevator started moving, but instead of going up, it went down. Mehran realized he had accidentally pressed the B button. He wanted to press the 10th floor button, but the elevator stopped and the doors opened. Mehran was faced with a strange sight. A dark, damp corridor stretched out before him, its end not visible. A peculiar smell hung in the air. Suddenly, he heard whispering. His curiosity overcame his fear, and he stepped out. The elevator doors closed behind him. At the end of the corridor, he saw a faint light. He moved towards it and encountered a scene that was hard to believe. A large room filled with strange equipment and people in white clothes working on something that looked like. Suddenly, one of them noticed Mehran's presence. They all turned towards him. Mehran knew he had to escape, but there was no way back. They rushed towards him. Could Mehran escape? What was the secret of the hotel's basement? The third story might answer some of your questions. Who do you think is staying in the room next to yours at the hotel? How would you react if you found out they weren't human at all? Nilufar, a 22-year-old psychology student, had come to a hotel in Isfahan for a conference. On the first night of her stay, she heard a strange sound from the next room. The sound was like a soft, continuous moan. She thought perhaps her neighbor was ill. The next morning, as she was leaving her room, she encountered an elderly woman coming out of the next room. The woman smiled and said, "I hope I didn't disturb you last night. I have a bit of a cold." Nilufar responded kindly and headed to the conference hall. Throughout the day, her mind was preoccupied with that strange sound. When she returned to the hotel that night, she heard the sound again. This time, she decided to check on her neighbor. She knocked, but there was no answer. To her surprise, she found the door was open. She gently pushed it and entered the room. The room was empty, with no sign of anyone staying there. Suddenly, she heard the moan coming from the bathroom. Nilufar fearfully approached the bathroom and opened the door. What she saw shattered all her mental equations. The elderly woman, or rather, something that looked like her, was sitting in the bathtub staring directly at her. But this creature no longer resembled a human. Nilufar wanted to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The creature stood up and moved towards her. Nilufar ran towards the door, but it was locked. She could hear the creature's footsteps behind her. Could Nilufar escape? What was that creature, and why was it staying at the hotel? These 3 stories are just a glimpse of the strange and terrifying events that occur in hotels. Perhaps the next time you stay at a hotel, you'll look at your surroundings more carefully. Who knows, you might witness something strange and inexplicable yourself.